بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. So these musings are about growing up as a man, I should say. Not saying that some of these advices won't be applicable to a girl or woman, but they are really directed to boys or men. And in fact, that distinction is kind of fluid because I would say many people who today would be considered children, I mean boys, they are men. And on the flip side of it, many men actually are just children today in this day and age. So it's kind of paradoxical that, and I mean by that, that many who are considered by the society to be children, I mean legally, even in some countries, whoever who is below the age of 21 is considered a minor or a child, you know. And the other aspect of it, which I said as many, or perhaps, most men are really children, meaning they have not grown into their role. They have not assumed the role of manhood, um, and all that this entails. So, what actually, what is a man? I mean, what does being a man entail? Being a man to me signifies basically more or less taking responsibility. Some have said that, being a man is about doing something. I just read somewhere that, a man is defined by what he does, and a woman is defined by what she is, just food for thought. Some say that a man is defined by his strength. That's also, mm, something worth, contemplating, I guess. So really, growing up, to me, and Allah knows best, can be summarized into three parts, or three, not phases, but let's say topics. So the first one is growing up. To grow up, you need to stop doing bad things. Meaning, stop doing things that are detrimental or counteract the act of growing up, or they actually, take away from your manhood. They actually will make you less of a man, and also perhaps not more importantly, but more so, you will be less seen as a grown-up man. Mhm. So that's the first thing. Stop doing bad things. Secondly, you need to start doing good things. And bad and good is really, kind of open-ended definition-wise. Bad meaning things that are destructive to your, essentially to your manhood, and good things, things that are actually constructive, and helps you towards your manhood, And the third thing is really circulating around the phenomenon of failure. Okay, and I will get into that. So stop doing bad things. Thing is, it's really it's not about being a man. It's not like you can't do bad things. No, that's not really it. But to be a man, you need to not do these things. There are certain things that actually, it's like you if you want to build an impression, and this is not about, coming across as a man. This is not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about growing up, not acting as a grown up, So, um, for example, I mean, if you want to make an impression on someone, let's say you want to make an impression that you're a professional, okay? First of all, most importantly, I mean, if you're a professional, there's no like secret recipe of like 3 or 4 or 5 things that you need to do in order to come across as a professional. It's just like you will come across more or less as a professional, almost like automatically if you just don't do anything unprofessional. So it's like, uh, you know, to grow up, you need to stop doing childish things. And there's nothing wrong with being childish and playful, meaning jovial. There's nothing wrong with that. But things that are, really, um I mean, there are some things that they're not only immature. Immaturity is also okay. But there are some things that are, it's not really that. It's kind of hard to find, right? So it's not that it's really irresponsible, but it's just like you're not grown up. You're not a man if you keep doing these things. And it's not 100% black or white, but there are some things that you shouldn't do them. Stop doing them. You know. So I can list a thousand of these things. For example, as a child, you're not really aware of yourself, and you're not really aware of your surroundings, and you're not really aware of the social situation. Okay. So, for example, let me just give you an example. So like a kid, like a 6-year-old or something, could go around, walk, and uh, amongst people and start, for example, picking his nose. You know, he's not aware of that, that this is something that you should not do. But yet again, this thing, I mean, this is a bad thing. This is a bad thing that you should stop doing. Okay, if you want to grow up, if you want to be a grown up, you need to stop this. Okay, but it's like there's not a definitive, exhaustive list of these things. It's just, I mean, the list is basically infinite, and the possibilities are endless to ruin your own maturity. That's why there's no such exhaustive list. um, so if I'm gonna say like stop picking your nose, then that's it sounds kind of silly, but let me just mention a few gotchas. Things that has I've observed with kids of different ages. So for example, let me just give an example. Like okay, picking your nose. Okay, don't do it. Do not do that. Okay. Uh, Also, personal hygiene. Personal hygiene. When you grow up, you gotta start taking care of that. Uh, that's something. That's really something that you. I mean, depending on your upbringing, some people have not had good parents, and some people had, parents were good, but they were not really active, not really participating in your upbringing. And some people had really bad parents, and they may not have learned this from anyone. So, for example, personal hygiene, taking a shower, for example, every 3 days at minimum, changing your clothes, change your shirt every, for example, 2 days, minimum 2 days, change your pants, comb your hair every 2 days. Um, if you have glasses, when you wake up, There will most probably be small particles on them, so polish your glasses. um, let's see. Doesn't matter if you have like a cadence. Okay, I will switch my, I'll swap my pants every 2 or 3 days or something. Uh, if you get a stain on it, you need to clean it. Clean it, remove the stain, or switch clothing, right? So it's like these are things that you need to be aware of these things. Like, how do you come across? How do people perceive you? Um, wash your hair. Keep an eye on your hair when you need to cut it. Does it really good? Does it look unkempt even if you comb it? Maybe it doesn't look good. For example, if you go to the hairdresser, um, if you get a short cut, if you have long hair and you tell the hairdresser, I want to keep my long hair, just do something about it. Okay, this is just see my random small gotchas, right? So if you have long hair and the hairdresser fixes it up, then that hair will, even if you leave it for 2 months, it'll look okayish. If you had a short haircut, that after 1 month will look terrible. Just a gotcha, you know. For example, when you eat, stop burping in front of people. Start making these noises when you chew. Hmm? Um, just in general, stop doing bad things. Okay. When you come home, someone, depending on the culture, you need to take off your shoes. You need to, stuff, just general stuff, right? Don't leave things when you have eaten in the kitchen. Don't leave stuff after you. Don't leave stuff after yourself. Okay, pick up after yourself. Um, when you leave a room, for example, you should turn off the lights. Um, let's see, what's more? Um, yeah, so I mean, generally, stop doing bad things. Okay. Also, another thing, actually, which is, it's not like a universal truth, but if you find yourself that, okay, some people are making remarks on something that you do, something like, okay, this is kind of awkward. Okay, you're understanding from their behavior, even though it's not a good way of saying it, they may tease you or something, that it's awkward, especially if people who are unrelated to each other, they don't know each other, but they both reacted on something that you do. For example, some way that what do I know? You do something to your hair, you kind of scratch yourself in your hair, for example. Then that is something you need to look into. Okay, so observations, even though they're said in a mean way, like for example, do you smell, huh? Bad breath, something like that. You know, just because they say it in a bad way doesn't mean that it's irrelevant. It could be, most probably there's something there. Um, I'll say another thing. Kids who are bullied. Unfortunately, I mean, it's bad to bully people, right? It's bad to bully people, especially kids, right? But kids who are bullied, they, um, how should I put this? They do something to, there is something with them that makes people bully them, Bullies don't bully everyone. They bully those who are vulnerable and, most importantly, come across as vulnerable. It doesn't matter. I mean, you know, for example, let's say that 5% of all kids in school are bullied. It doesn't mean that, I mean, they are vulnerable for sure, but it is not a fact that, those 5% are the only one who are vulnerable. No, there are probably like 40% or even more, maybe 60%, something like that. I mean, there's a large proportion of all kids who are actually vulnerable and would be uh, potential bullied kids, But the bullies, single out those who come across as most vulnerable and most awkward, socially awkward, you know. Could be things like, okay, he does something weird, you know. He smells bad. He never changes. He always wears that same shirt for 5 days straight, something like that. You know, mm, you know, awkward things. You know, sometimes you can't change these things, okay? But you still, there's not only that thing. I mean, if you're born with something, then that is not the only thing. It's not the only factor in if you're gonna get bullied or not. Okay, um, so if you, for example, if you're limp, all right, you walk with like, you know, uneven, you walk in a strange manner, for example. If you can't change that, I'm not judging anybody, by the way. I'm just saying that um, there are perhaps some things, perhaps there's something in your eyes that show that you're really insecure, you know, and in fact, that is what makes you, um, you know, susceptible to bullying. It's not the actual limp, you know, or the thing, you know. There's two parts of two elements of this. First of all, there needs to be something that the person is annoyed by, and second of all, the person needs to come across as very vulnerable, right? Sometimes it's just that he's vulnerable. He looks like, you know, his look is emanating, you know, is radiating insecurity. You know, that is also not, you know, but then again, that is not something that you can't affect. You know, so that is something actually that, you know, about insecurity. First of all, I have to mention that insecurity, you know, it's not limited to insecurity, but I mean, subhanallah, there's a surprisingly there's how can I say this? Surprisingly, subhanallah, a surprisingly large amount of all quirks of a person or characteristics comes from their childhood. And it's very strange, subhanallah. For example, if you see a guy who hits his kids, he abuses his kids, you know, then that guy, he like a father, you can, I mean, you can make a bet that that guy in his childhood he was abused. And what's the logic behind this? Because you know, logically speaking, the person who has received abuse, he would know, he would be the first person to tell you that abuse is not good, right? This is not the way I want to treat my children, right? But actually, and as a matter of fact, um, that person, this is where the subconscious comes in, you know. Uh, the person has learned, you know, not only by the beatings, but he, you know, he wasn't beaten by a stranger, right? That he can, you know, that he sees as a monster, and that you know, he sees as pure evil. You know, no, he was beaten by who? By the people who were most beloved to him, and the people who loved him. And as such, he has not only experienced the abuse, but he has learned that the people who love him the most beat him. And he doesn't really, you know, a child really always wants to make a sense of his experiences, you know. So a child, that's why a child, you know, is very amusing to listen to. Like, okay, yeah, so for example, yeah, a child will tell you, okay, this is Ahmad, for example, and his father and his mother, you know, and you can ask the child, like, okay, but Ahmad's mother, who is her father? Where's her father? Yeah, sorry, I got a call. Uh, so you can ask the child, Ahmad's mother, who is her father? and he will go, well, that is Ahmed's, that's that one, he's pointing at Ahmed's father. And you can ask that, ask the child, but who is his mother? And he will, a child is, continuously trying to make sense of the world, right? So the child actually understands this paradoxical thing that my parents are abusing me, yet they love me. So that means that love includes abuse, you know? And that is the reason why we have it's not really a repeat offender. That's the wrong word for it. But I mean the uh, this paradoxical thing that the thing that you have endured as a child, you will actually repeat it. If it is by a loved one, you will most likely repeat it. And everything. I mean, thing is, the mind, what you subconsciously, absorb and establish in your subconscious, that will affect you. You will act accordingly. Allahu alam. Most likely. So, for example, I had a colleague, subhanallah. I saw him. It was a young guy. He just got out of school, and always when he came into the office, he began by washing his hands with soap. Okay, and he was like, yeah. I was like, hey, do you wash your hands with soap? And when he came back from lunch, he washed his hand with soap. And I was like, what? How come you do that? And he was like, no, I'm thinking about my hygiene. But you can tell this guy, it was not a Muslim. He didn't care about his hygiene. He had fatty hair. He didn't change his clothes. And you can see on his face, that he is not, washing himself, and he's not a hygienic person. You know. So then we started talking. I didn't obviously just follow up on this, but he actually told me once that his father, he didn't let him, as a child, he didn't let him use the computer um, except before washing his hands. Okay, so he actually, yeah, exactly. So he actually had this fear of what's it called? Germophobia. So he had like a phobia of bacteria and stuff. So I mean, I told him that, no, he told me that, if he touched the computer when he was a small child, without washing his hands, his father would get, furious. And it was obvious, it became kind of abusive, Um so I said, have you thought about this germophobia? It might have come from the experiences with your father. And he didn't really catch on to that. He didn't really, jump on the train. But actually, after I told him that, he stopped having a phobia of bacteria, fear of bacteria, after a few weeks. And that's very interesting. I find that very interesting. And that's something I've seen continuously. Consistently. That if you confront your subconscious, behavioral patterns, they kind of dissipate, and not perhaps disappear completely, but they will definitely be more sane, and become more reasonable and manageable. So, for example, that's why, a'udhu billah, pedophiles, they're always uh, themselves victims of abuse. So they abuse others because they themselves have experienced abuse, and so on and so forth. So that's something you need to. I think it's necessary and very important to be aware of this, the subconscious part of your mind, because it will play a role, you know. So this also plays in when it comes to insecurity. Okay, insecurity, it you know, it has to do with your childhood. Okay, and insecurity, anxiety, phobias, it very much has to do with your childhood, very much, to a large extent, and Allah knows best. So, for example, maybe you can try, processing some of your childhood. If you have anxiety, if you're good, then you're good. You don't need to do it, right? But, maybe your dad or your mom, became livid. Maybe there was some kind of trigger. If you did something, then there would be a big fight. So, for example, a brother I know, actually, he has this fear of conflict. When there is just a little bit of a hint that something might become a heated discussion or something, he just panics, just shuts everything down, and that's is not good, and it has to do with yeah. So it's very important, inshallah, to be aware of your most importantly your childhood. Map it out. What happened there? Has anything notable happened? Some abuse, and I mean also social abuse, and for example punishments, shaming. Shaming has a very large, very strong effect on your sense of security. Um, Things like poverty, that could play a role as well. Um, Yeah, so I mean, there is really no definitive list of things that can be included here. So that's really, that's the bad things. Don't do bad things, and then a little bit of an insecurity, and then you have do good things. Okay, growing up, you need to do things, right? You need to be productive, uh, especially as a man, right? You need to be productive. You need to be, a person who is active and doing something productive, constructive, making money. You're gonna be the breadwinner of a home, right? Of a family. Um, and most importantly, you will need to take responsibility. You know, some people, they're all about girls, women, lust and desires, but there's subhanallah, the wisdom in that these things, they lead to what? Pregnancies, right? So there's a huge wisdom in that, because I mean, if you play with fire, you're gonna burn something down. I mean, there is an action and a consequence, right? So you need to realize this and internalize this as soon as possible. That okay, you're growing up, you're becoming a man, you're probably already a man. I mean, there's basically it's only logical to assume that if you're listening to this, you're already a man, you know? And as such, you have a desire for women, right? That's good. That's the sense. I mean, that's an indication that you are healthy, you know? If you wouldn't, then I would be worried, you know? So you need to understand and realize as soon as possible and internalize this as well as possible that it is only, I mean, the desire is only a segue into responsibility. Because if you meet a girl, I mean, you marry her, you get a child, that child is on your neck, you know? You will need to provide for that child. And not only materially, security wise as well. And the beginning of that is obviously the girl. You would need to provide for her as well. provide security for her, and that is why, I mean, girls are also, genetically wired for this, right? The girl wants security. They want a man who is, financially stable, socially accepted, and strong. Not perhaps physically, but strong in some sense, So yeah, exactly. So one thing a guy told me, he said that, subhanallah, men, they think more about what can be, what is the potential of doing this? What can we earn? What can we get out of this if we do this? What can we make of it? I mean, what can we earn? And he said, but women, look at the women. They don't think of the possibilities. They think of the risk. What can go wrong if we do this? What can happen? What dangers come along with this? And it's interesting. And this is something that you actually can see in driving. If by and large, men are more likely to escape a situation by pushing the pedal. By pushing the gas pedal. Women are more likely to push the brake. I don't know if you have realized this, but this is to me very much truth. Very much true. So, but doing good things. The thing is, as a man, you need to provide. You need to do something. You need to be a doer. It won't cut it if you're like, no, I can't. I want to stay in my bed. That won't cut it. I wanna play computer games all day, and that 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 won't work. That means that you're depressed and you're not, in fact, ready for marriage. Sure. I mean, the girl might help you. She will help you, inshallah. She will help you get through your depression, you know. But this is not the way to get married. That thing is a detriment to getting married, right? So that is something you optimally would fix or remedy before marriage. Okay, you will save yourself a lot of trouble because in marriage it's on. You need to you need to perform. You need to perform. I mean, you need to be performant. You need to be a working man. You need to be able to go to work, pay the rent. You need to be able to, for example, if your wife's sick in the middle of the night, you're the one who has to go to the pharmacy. You need to stand up to the occasion. You know, and that means that you need to find your strength. You need to really find your strength, and before all of this happens, you should remove all the detriments or try to remedy them. Even if that entails going to a therapist, and that I should say that is kind of risky, you should be very mindful of who you go to, but sometimes it's the only way, I mean, thing is, therapists, by and large, they are professional listeners. They ask a little bit of, leading questions, but mostly they just listen, and that I used to call them. I've stopped doing that, but I used to call them rent a friend. You know, they're just rent a friends because yeah, they're doing what your friends should be doing for you. You should be able to share your anxieties and your problems with friends and family, and they should be listening, and that really does the most part of it, because you will when you lay it out, verbally to someone and explain to them, you will mention things that you might not even have thought about yourself, because you need to explain them, and then you need to, make sense of them, and as such you're processing things, you know. So that's a very effective way of getting rid of anxieties and other, mental problems, depression, you know. Just talking about things is a way of, and most definitely it is um, it's a step in the way of processing. Okay. um, just one aside. I have an analogy actually, because a year ago I bought a chainsaw. Okay, a chainsaw. Just the cheapest one I can find. And actually, to me, it's not really. I knew that a chainsaw is a dangerous tool, obviously, Um, it could kill you, it could maim you. Really, it's like it's an extremely dangerous tool. But when I started using it, I actually found that, first of all, obviously, you can get a lot of value from it. And secondly, it's not like when you start it, it's not like it's gonna, explode or, start hurting people. How can I say this? Indiscriminately. It will hurt in a very specific way. So that means that there is a way of handling it without getting hurt. So the thing is, I started using that chainsaw to cut down trees and so on and so forth. Obviously, alhamdulillah, I did my research, did my homework, started slowly. I asked people for advice and so on and so forth. But that's beside the point. Thing is, alhamdulillah, I know how to handle a chainsaw. Now, I know how to handle a chainsaw. And when someone asks me, my son, he actually approached me and he said, "Dad, I want to try the chainsaw." You know what I said? And he was 15 at the time. I said, "Go ahead. I will show you." But yeah, absolutely, you can do it. So I showed, I explained everything and everything I've learned and so on and so forth, and I let him try it. Slowly. First I held it, then you know, in a educational manner. But some people have asked me, "Do you think I am ready to try out the chainsaw?" My answer has been no. You're not ready. Why? Well, because you've asked. If you asked if you're ready, if you have to ask if you're ready, then you're not ready. Because yes, you understand that the tool is of immense value. It has immense use. But if you're asking, that means that you have not, to me that tells me that you have not considered all the risks. And maybe you have, but as long as you're asking me, then I will say no. But if you're telling me that, yeah, I'm gonna try it, I want to try it, do I have your permission? Then I will say yes. You have my permission. I don't know if this makes sense, but it's kind of like, I want to make sure that you have thought of the implications of doing this. And by the same principle, when people ask me, "Do you think I am ready to get married?" I say no. Why not? Because you asked. If you have to ask, then you're not ready. I mean, I think the principle holds, because you're thinking of the good stuff of the marriage. You're thinking of all the value you can get out of it. Being with a woman and so on and so forth. all the romance and blah blah blah, you know. But there is another side of it. It's not the dark side, you know, but it's the flip side, that it comes with a lot of responsibility, you know. The Prophet ﷺ said that the women are your captives, which means, you know, if you don't feed them, no one's gonna feed them. You can't just leave, you know. You have to take care of them. You're stuck, and you know the captor, the person who is holding someone captive, he is stuck with the captive. It's not like he is free to do anything. He can't just leave like 2 months somewhere. No, he is stuck. He's also captive, you know, in a sense. So you are responsible for the woman, right? You're responsible for all aspects of her existence. I mean, even if she is rich, you have to provide for her, you know? So, about that, if you're not ready, maybe you're not ready. I mean, maybe you yourself think that you're not ready, okay? Obviously, I wouldn't say you're ready. If you're not ready, you're not ready. I mean, by that, if you say you're not ready, then I'm gonna agree with that. But then again, if you say you're not ready, that means you're thinking about the risks. That means that you are more ready than a person who actually asks, "Do you think I'm ready?" By the way, and even some people who say they are ready, even if they maybe they didn't think about the risks, most probably not. So it means that you're actually more ready than most, you know. Uh, but to me, Allah knows best. Being a man and being a grown up and growing up means that you need to start doing good things, the right things, you know, the things that actually carry you towards your goal of growing up. Okay. You know, to me, it's like facing the responsibilities. You know, being productive, facing the responsibilities. You know, doing those boring stuff that you don't want to do. That's really one of the things about growing up. Absolutely. But it's also about skills. You need a certain set of skills, man, to grow up, to be considered a grown up. I mean, for example, if you can't boil an egg, are you really a grown up? Really? Are you? Depends on the culture, you know. But in my culture, I would say, no, you're not a grown up. You don't even know how to boil an egg. You know? If your parents are gone for a week, would you be able to care for yourself and your home and not look like a caveman by the time they come back? If not, then you're not a grown up. You're still a child. So you need to I think it's called inventorize. Like you need to map out all the things, for example, that your parents are doing for you. Map it out. I mean, this is serious. This is serious. You should actually get a notebook. Just map out everything you need to know. Everything you need to know how to do. For example, God forbid if they pass on, you know. If you go and get married, you need to know most, if not all, of those things that your parents did for you. You know, even your mom, you know. For example, I mean, there's nothing wrong in knowing these things. For example, okay, if you're gonna say like, oh yeah, my wife's gonna boil my eggs for me, I'm not gonna do it. You need to know how to do it. You need to know. What if your wife, God forbid, you know, becomes terminally ill, or what if she is sick for like a month, or you know, what if she has, gives birth, or whatever, you know? You need to know. So, for example, there are lots of things here to do good things. You know, these are kind of like, in Swedish we call it like hygienical things. Like you need to know these things. It's a must. You know, but then there are other things as well. So like, okay, to me, like, okay, boil an egg, make tea, make coffee. You need to know these things. Buy groceries. If you don't know how to buy groceries, you're not a man. Okay, you need to be able to clean the house. Every aspect, every aspect of cleaning the house, you need to know how to do it. And if you tell me, no, my dad won't let me, you're not a man. For example, I'm going to tell you, okay, this goes from the most basic, fundamental, to the least fundamental, almost like additive, extra stuff, For example, vacuuming the house, wiping the floor, mopping the floor, cleaning the toilet. You need to know that, man. Clean the toilet. And that means also stop doing bad things. The toilet should not look like, a disaster or a war zone when you're done. That's about grown up. If you don't care about that, if you don't realize that, you're not a grown up. When you brush your teeth, there should not be anything left in the sink. If you do that, you're not a grown up. In my eyes, you're not a grown up. Okay? So really, clean the whole toilet. What does that entail? Right? Clean the kitchen. What does that entail? Even the oven. You need to know how to do it. I'm not saying you're gonna do it for all your life. No, that's not a given. I'm not saying that. Your room. Not only do you need to know how to clean your room, you need to clean your room. That the room needs to be clean. Okay? And I would even dare to say squeaky clean. So these kinds of things, and you might notice that I'm like expanding the area here from most central to more peripheral. The windows. Who's going to wipe the windows? You should do it. You do it. I don't care if you're a rich boy and rich kid and you have a gardener who fixes these things. You need to know how to do it. If you're a man, learn how to do it. All right? You do the dinner for once. You do it. You fix breakfast. And not your own little scrawly breakfast. You ask everyone what they want for breakfast, get the groceries, and fix the breakfast. Like a Saturday or something. You can just do it once. Okay? And then do the dishes. All right? And the wiping of the windows is like the least fundamental. Okay? Then we have other things. You need to know, if you ask me, you need to know how to fix a sewage problem. If the sink is, what do you call it, like stuck, there's no flow, you need to know how to open that and remove that gunk, the hair and stuff. That's something you will need to know how to do. And most importantly, you will need to not scare away from it. Because if your wife tells you that there's a obstruction in the sink, and you say ew, she's gonna, shake her head and say, this is not a man. He didn't stand up to the occasion, right? And it's not like everything of this is like an expectation of a married man, no. But I'm gonna tell you other things, okay? Switch a light bulb. Obviously, that's an expectation, but I won't really categorize things, okay? Switch a light bulb, okay? Fix that squeaky door. Apply oil to it. Lubricate it. Can you fix a flat tire? Can you switch a tire? Can you clean a car, for example? Can you reinstall a computer? Can you switch a fuse? And so on and so forth. Outside, can you cut the lawn? Can you trim the bushes? Can you, and listen to this, can you paint a room? Let's say most likely you have a wall in your house with a little hole in it. Someone threw something, or they were moving something, and now there's a little hole in the wall. Can you fix that? Get some plaster? Get some plaster. You go get some plaster. There are small tubes, like 100 mils, and small tubes. Get a tube of plaster, fill it, and then a little bit of sandpaper, and fix it. Okay, fix it. Paint a room. That's also a good one. Can you fix a broken piece of furniture? That's also a good one. Can you paint furniture? Can you fix? Okay, this is another one. I was gonna mention it. Can you patch up a piece of garment? Like pants. Let's say there's a small hole in them in your pants. Can you fix that? Can you patch up the hole? Not patch it. I'm not saying you should apply. I mean, bring another piece of fabric and sew that on top of it. That's no. I'm saying you should patch it up. You should close the hole with a needle and a thread. That's a really important thing to know how to do, actually, and it's very, very handy. Okay. Yeah. So these kinds of good things. These are good things, and some people, they're like, well, I can't be motivated. I can't be bothered, to be honest. Well, that's a depressed guy. He's depressed. And to get out of your depression, you need to, like, I mean, I think there are two things that are essential to removing depression. First off, you have the traumas that you need to process, and then you need to build up some kind of personality, like character, secure, self-esteem, and so on and so forth. So, like, it's the same. Stop doing bad things, start doing good things. So that it's like, okay, if you have a cavity in your tooth, okay, remove the bad stuff and fill it up. So yeah, exactly. You need to have a plan. If you're gonna be responsible, if you want to marry a woman in a couple of years from now, you need to have a plan, because you need to map out, what do I need to know and need to be able to do by the time I get married. Okay, and then you have, like, okay, then you have an idea of what's missing. Now you need to make a plan of, how do I get there? How do I learn how to do these things that I can't do today? Okay, that might entail getting a degree. That might entail, learning all these skills, and it will most definitely entail getting a job. Okay, and if you tell me that I don't know what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna tell you that you better figure it out by the time you get married. Because, I mean, if you're gonna say to the girl that, okay, I'm unemployed, I don't have a degree, basically you have no prospect of securing her financially, good luck. She's not gonna, I mean, most likely, if she's not in a very bad position, she's gonna say thanks, but no thanks. Okay. So, thing is, many guys there, so many guys there, like, semi-depressed. They can't be bothered. They don't know what they're gonna do in their lives, and that's fine. I mean, it's a fact. I know that. But I mean, really, as a man, I think you need a compass. You need a direction. Okay. If you don't know what you're gonna do, what you want to do in your life, you need to figure it out. Okay. That's the thing. I mean, you shouldn't be content with not knowing. You need to get knowing. Okay. And how do you um, like come to know what you want to do? Well, you need to try things out. Okay. So start by these skills I told you about. Start cleaning, start doing food, start perhaps, mowing lawns for the neighbors. I don't know. Just start doing stuff. And maybe you will come to the conclusion that, hey, this is fun. I want to do this as my day job. For example, fixing cars, you know. Um, Maybe you switch tires. Maybe you will switch fuel filters and whatnot, oil changes. Maybe you like that. You can start doing it. Do it for as an extra income. You know. Um, Maybe you start doing this, and you realize that, hey, I really like talking to people. Maybe you're going to be a salesman. You know. Maybe you realize that, okay, I'm actually I have a sense of like coordination or something, that okay, you're going to be a project manager, perhaps. I don't know. So basically, you have a skill set, a future skill set, let's say, that's unknown to you. So you don't know that you will know how to drive, for example. That's a good one as well, driver's license. Um, but there are things that you don't know that you don't know. So you need to get out there, try out a bunch of things. Try writing, copywriting, I don't know. I don't know. You don't know either, but you need to get knowing, you know? So start reading, YouTube for all these DIYers and, all these people who are like hustling and grinding and, bartering and swapping a paper clip for a house, and I don't know, all these kinds of people. It's potential inspiration, you know. You need to cast a wide net, and maybe, just maybe, you will find something that you feel is worthwhile. And if you don't, then there's not a problem with those things. They're not really that boring. I think the problem is with you and the fact that you're depressed. You need to process that before you can become a functional human being and a functional man and grow up. Okay? That's a growth inhibitor right there. So let's start doing good things. And lastly, the third part is about failure. Thing is, many people, they don't want to try whatever. They don't want to try because they don't want to fail. But really, and Allah knows best, life is about failure to a large extent. It's about failure, you know. Most everything, like learning something is 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 less about how you should do than how you should not do, you know. Driving, for example, okay, it's like, these things are kind of like self-evident, take the steering wheel, press the gas. But what shouldn't you do? You should not drive fast in a residential area. You should not do this. You should not drive through red lights. And it's a lot about like gotchas. When you see this, don't do this. Beware. Blah blah blah. So it's like, really, these things, these gotchas are about people in the past who have failed. Residential areas, slow down. Why do you think that is? Obviously, people got killed that way. Obviously. So really, failure is a part of life. Even growing up, learning how to walk and stuff, that's life is mired with failure, man. It's like we don't stop failing, really, you know? And you just have to accept that fact. And really, your outlook should not be like, okay, I won't fail in the future. No, you will fail. You will fail. But I mean, for example, we have learned successfully how to walk, right? We we achieved that, but so we're not really struggling with walking on two legs, right? But we moved our goalposts and want to achieve more. And those things that we are aiming to do now, we are failing at, you know. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's a fact of life. It's a must, you know. And the people I have seen uh, who are the most successful people I have seen in my life, and I don't really mean, and I do not only mean dunya wise, even ulama. I have seen that they are experts in handling failure with patience. That's what I've seen. Alhamdulillah, I came to this insight. I've seen some things. They really handle failure like uh, not effortlessly, but really, they have accepted. They're not grieving because of failures. And you will see any people, if they're very successful and you see, they're sometimes they're like there's like news like, okay, this person did this and this person made that mistake, like scandalous thing. They tripped and I don't know what. If they are very successful, you will see that they just shrug it off. They shrug it off. And that's not perhaps not the key to success, but it is crucial, If you for example, let's say you're at a I don't know, something silly, stupid, like a banquet or something. That's like, the media is there and blah blah blah, and you trip. If you're really successful, then that can't bring you down. That can't, stop you in your tracks. So I mean, you need to focus on the success and your achievements and so on and so forth. It's just an example. So successful people also fail, but they don't let the failures get them down, right? So it's like failure is almost relative, you know. Um, so it's like any person who you think is very successful and they continue to be successful, that is because they are not content with their successes. They think that there's more to succeed in, and you know what I'm getting at. You see, like they think that they haven't succeeded yet, and that in itself is almost like a failure. They can't let it be. They can't let it be. That they need to strive to succeed in more things. So any failures on the way there can't reasonably stop them. You know. And if you said to them like, "Wow, you already succeeded with this," they already forgot that. They are on their next achievement already. You know. And if you think that, for example, well, let's say you speak two languages. You speak your mother tongue, for example, Urdu, and you speak English. Okay, and then you go to an English exam and you fail. Okay, you failed your exam, but you can speak English, right? And then you speak to your cousin or something who only knows Urdu, and you said, "Yeah, I failed. I got an F," and he was like, And he will go, man, what are you talking? That's this. You're not a failure. You can speak English. You know, I'm trying to say that it's relative. You know, your failures really, you know, how much they get to you is really a question of how do you look at them. You know, you need to not look at them. You know, so that's the thing. If you want to get anywhere, you need to fail. I mean, you will fail. That is really, it's a must. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك